Welcome aboard the Athletics Can't Wait Jets podcast, your nonstop shop for all things Jets with Tim McMaster, Zack Rosenblatt, and Marissa Dunn.
Can't wait!
The wait continues for Aaron Rodgers. Will the Jets catch the biggest free agent fish in the wide receiver market? We'll talk about that, OBJ, and what's left to do on the offensive and defensive lines. Plenty to talk about on this episode of the Can't Wait podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tim McMaster, along with Zack Rosenblatt, our Jets reporter at The Athletic, and also Marissa Dunn. We're going to take some of your questions out of the chat as we roll along as well. So Marissa will be grabbing those and we'll be answering those. Because, hey, we're still kind of just in this waiting mode for Rodgers to officially be a Jet, and we will get into that. But we do have to start with something else, a more pressing matter here as we sit here in the middle of March Madness. We're not talking about the men's bracket, although that went badly for you as well,
either,
Zach. Yeah, the twos. I don't know if everybody knows. Everybody knows Marissa went to Maryland. That is very clear on this podcast. I feel like less people realize, Zach, that you went to Arizona. So the second seeded men's team goes out in the first round to Princeton, who has proved their worth since then, getting to the Sweet 16. But then on the women's side, Maryland and Arizona go head to head in the second round, and the Terps take down the Wildcats. I can't talk. Syracuse didn't make either tournament. The women's team just went through a scandal. The men's team is obviously moving on to a new coach. There's a mess there. So Marissa, get some trash talking.
Yeah, I mean, like Maryland women's basketball is just unbelievable. Every year they're consistently so good. Brenda Freeze is like probably one of the best coaches throughout the entire college landscape, not just women's sports. And I mean, sorry, Zach, but like that's what happens. Fear the turtle, right?
Oh my God.
Diamond Miller is like a star, and she's a Jersey girl. So what's better than a Jersey girl Terp just dominating? So
I was mainly sad because I was hoping to have a team to cheer for now that March is here. And Arizona went to the champ. They like made a surprise run to the championship a couple years ago. Adia Barnes, I covered when I was still in Arizona, and I like covered her intro press conference back when she was first hired by Arizona. I covered Arizona women's basketball when they won 5 total games one year. And so to see them where they are now is cool. But yeah, disappointing to see them lose, especially in on the heels of what happened. I'm pretending Arizona was never in the men's basketball tournament. And so that way I will say I do appreciate that a 16 seed won. And so it kind of distracted everybody from the fact that the Arizona had the worst upset. So there was a little bit less. And like you said, like Princeton winning another game and winning it, like they killed Missouri. Like it wasn't even close, which is crazy.
Yeah, shout out
to NJ team. We cheer for the NJ teams here.
Yeah,
of course. So
big shout out to the New Jersey. I mean, New Jersey basketball is like
every
upset.
year.
Yeah,
like NJ teams are better when they're like high seeds. It's like they go on runs.
Yeah.
But you know who you can root for, Zach? You could root for Xavier the rest of the way because Sean Miller.
I'm not rooting for Sean Miller. No. I'm good.
Sean Miller is back at Xavier and winning again. Hey, Arizona was great when Miller was there until he's got a little questionable.
Well, so I still text with some of my buddies from Arizona, and me and one of my friends. This is a sidetrack that nobody cares about, but
we'll get back to the Jets in a moment.
Yeah. So there's like a Sports Illustrated story back when Sean Miller was at Arizona still about how before he at some point he lost a bunch of weight, but before he did, he would be on the road recruiting, and he was known amongst like other coaches for eating a lot of nachos. When he would watch recruits, so people referred to him as Nacho Miller. So me and my one friend call him Nacho all the time now. I covered Arizona basketball. He wasn't the friendliest to the media, but whatever.
So I have to give a shout out to Taylor in our chat.
Yeah, I saw.
I didn't even realize that, I'm pumping up Brenda Freeze. She went to Arizona.
Oh, hey, I forgot about that.
We do have some connection there.
There we go.
But yeah.
Yeah, so she's only having her success at Maryland because of Arizona.
Because she went to Arizona. Got it. Yeah. But it was a great weekend of college basketball. Men,
there were some good games. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize Taylor is a Arizona grad as well. So
yeah, we
did know that, didn't we?
Taylor talked about it when he came on as our guest picker.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah. And Dan is the Terp grad. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the Jets. Although that was fun. You guys can make fun of Syracuse whenever you want at this point because it's dark times in Central New York.
Bye, baby.
But Aaron Rodgers, still not a Jet, still expected fully to be a Jet at some point. Obviously, the holdup, Zach, is the trade. And you have your prediction, which I'd love to throw out here, because I think if it ends up being, you said a 2023 second rounder, 2024 conditional third rounder, I'm assuming that's conditional on Rodgers playing a second season.
I should say Peter King pointed out in his article that it probably would make more sense for it to be a 2025 conditional third rounder, because then if he plays in 2024,
right,
then they
would
get
kick in
next year kind of thing. So I think that would be more logical. And then
Corey Davis,
receiver or two, basically. And I said Corey Davis or Mims kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, if that works out, I think if the Jets hold on to all their first round picks and get Aaron Rodgers, I think that, they can celebrate that. Joe Douglas can take another bow. Do you think, I assume this is coming down to the fact that the Packers want a first round pick, right?
Yeah, I think that's the sticking point. And I don't think anybody really knows how negotiations are going. I imagine there hasn't really been much that has changed. I'm sure both are trying to stand their ground and both feel like they have the time to wait. But I've been asked, obviously there's a lot of interest in Rodgers. So I've been on an alarming amount of like radio and TV shows over the last week. If I get asked one more time, who has more leverage in the situation, I might quit.
I didn't go there because I honestly believe the leverage, my opinion, the leverage is even. I think both teams have no leverage.
There's a reporter I think named Connor Hughes who tweeted about this. He said there's no, like, both teams either have the most or have no leverage. Like you can make a case for either side. And I think the day to watch is the draft. I think that's like, because if I would think that Packers want to get players in the building now to help surround Jordan Love and all that stuff. They're not really making much go on in free agency. They're going to be stuck with Rodgers' cap hit. Although I guess they have a bigger cap hit on the books if they trade him before June 1st. But I ultimately think the draft is the one to keep the eye on, because I would think the Packers want picks this year. I don't think the Jets should or will trade that number 13 pick, because he's a 39-year-old quarterback who might retire after a year. And I'm sure they're more willing to give up a first next year, which in theory should be, you're doing that with the assumption you're going to win a lot of games. So it would be a later draft pick. So I think that's a sticking point. They're both trying to stand their ground. I don't know who has more leverage. I don't think either of them really have leverage. Ultimately, they both need to get this done. We were texting about it before the show. The conspiracy theory guy in me wonders if, like, the NFL announces their schedule in May, which is like shortly after the draft. I imagine the NFL wants to know for sure that Aaron Rodgers is going to be on. I think they're pretty confident. Everybody's confident Aaron Rodgers is going to be on the Jets, because they're going to make their schedule. And I know you wanted to get into this at some point. I guess we could skip ahead now.
No time like
like they're going to have a lot of primetime games if Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback. And that's a big part of the NFL's announcement. When they make the announcement for the schedule, the biggest thing everybody looks at is the primetime games. Who's playing on Thanksgiving? Who's playing Monday night? Who's playing Sunday night? Who's doing the Thursday night games? I saw Peter King suggested them as like the Black Friday game they're doing this year. I'm gonna have a lot of late nights this year, is my impression. But anyway, so my conspiracy theorist in me wonders if the NFL might be like, "Hey guys, get this done now." I think I saw somebody point this out. I obviously wasn't covering the team back then, but I think when they traded for Bill Parcells or whatever it was like a long drawn out negotiation, and I think the NFL was like, "You guys need to do this right now," and then it got done. So I don't know if the NFL gets involved like that anymore, but this is the topic that is consuming everybody, and it's maybe the biggest swing factor in the entire fall schedule. So I wonder if the NFL is going to be like, guys, let's figure this out. And because the Jets are a candidate for Hard Knocks as well. So there's like a lot of factors here. And I imagine Aaron Rodgers
wondering that if the Jets
being on Hard Knocks would be very appealing to the NFL.
Oh,
do you think if the Jets are on Hard Knocks, like, are players obligated to partake in Hard Knocks if they take your team?
Like, I don't think so,
because I could see a Hard Knocks on the Jets where Aaron Rodgers.
Like, I remember one year, I can't remember like timelines and stuff, but like the Rams were on once. The first time the Rams were on, Jared Goff was like a big part of it. And then when they were on again, when they did like the split LA season, I don't think Jared Goff did like any of the interviews, so I think they probably do have the choice, and some guys are more willing to like let them in. I can't imagine Rodgers would let them in.
How about Zach Wilson?
Oh man, I'm pretty confident he wouldn't, but and it's always fat. I don't watch the show as much as I used to, because I don't think it's gotten, because there's so much access to everything going on already. So I don't think it's as interesting as it used to be. But like how they handled the Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers stuff would be fascinating too.
Yeah,
we would have to maybe.
Oh yeah, we'd have plenty.
We would have
we're
to
gonna
watch
have
every
plenty
minute
of
of
we're
Hard
gonna have plenty to
Knocks.
talk about anyway. But
Yeah.
I'd have to write about each episode as well.
Yeah,
so.
we'll have to do episode breakdowns on the podcast and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Look at us just planning all these podcasts.
Actually, it's good. It would be good. That's easy content, right?
And
Oh,
Hard
for
Knocks
sure.
is like it's weird what teams can and cannot be part of
Yeah,
it.
it
It's a
like has to
select
be like a
list.
returning coach to a team that
Right.
didn't make
Didn't
the
make
playoffs. I think. Yeah.
in like the last few years.
Yeah, and
I
they
think
can't have
they-
been on Hard Knocks in a certain amount of time either.
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah.
Last year, I
Basically,
think there
like
were only
you're
3 teams.
motivated as a good
Yeah.
team.
I forget what the other teams. I think like the Saints were one of the teams, so they're kind of interesting. And there's like a couple others that.
Last year, I think it was like 3. There were 3 options, including the Jets. So, and then the Lions obviously ended up.
The Jets are usually a candidate if their coach is beyond their first year because they don't make the playoffs. So.
Right.
Okay.
You know
I think
who will be on a lot?
The 4 candidates are the Bears, Saints, Jets, and Commanders. So
Well,
I
the
would say
Bears could be
the Bears
interesting.
those are all interesting, but the Jets
It won't
are
be the
most-
Commanders because the NFL will not.
Yeah,
Want to
yeah,
shine a
they don't
spotlight
they don't
on
want
that
anything to do with them.
franchise. Like,
Yeah,
there's no
and
chance.
the Jets are the most appealing because there would be way more eyes on it if Rodgers is on the team. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see a lot of interviews with Woody. I don't think Joe Douglas sits down much, but
yeah, he's not a big talker.
Saleh would be a star.
Saleh would- oh, yeah.
he'd
Yeah,
be
he
an
would.
absolute star. Yep.
And they're in the
well,
Hall of Fame game.
Oh, my
so
God.
lots of
Crazy year ahead, guys.
yeah,
okay.
buckle up, Jets fans.
Yeah, excited, Zach. All right, that's a lot. We wanted to mention the schedule thing because of the prime time games, so we went down a whole path there. That was great.
Yeah, rabbit hole.
All right, let's talk about wide receivers. They got one, Allen Lazard. It's official. The 27-year-old. We talked about it a little bit on the last episode, but when he spoke on Friday, he said Hackett was a big part of this one. He knows Hackett from 2 stops along the way. But this is a guy who should really fill that Corey Davis role nicely. 6'5", 225. He's been really good. Obviously, the familiarity with Aaron Rodgers, one of Aaron Rodgers' guys. We talked about that. The one thing that's interesting, Zach, the salary cap hit in 2023. They managed to keep it at just 3.26. It leaps after that to 12.18, then 13.18. But they did the finagling there to keep that low to allow them to continue to do things here in the offseason.
Yeah, that Joe Douglas more than usual has really backloaded the contracts and they restructure all those deals to backload them. So you're going to see in the coming years, there's a lot of really big cap hits on guys that maybe you wouldn't be as excited about to have that big cap hit. But the Jets, like a lot of teams, I think one of the most interesting thing about this offseason, there hasn't been as many cap casualties because I think a lot of teams are more willing to either hold on to these guys or restructure them because the cap's going up so much in the next couple of years. So like a guy like Corey Davis normally would have been cut before free agency even started. Instead, they're keeping him, seeing if they can either include him in the Packers trade or find something else. Or I think they were open to keeping him until they got Lazard. I don't think you can really keep both of those guys. So yeah, they've structured their deals because they don't have a lot of cap space right now. They're hanging on to guys like Carl Lawson, Corey Davis, even the lower end guys like Ashton Davis and Bryce Hall, who have like a couple million on the books. Like they're holding on to these guys as long as they can. And then when they have to make some moves, I think they will. So that's why you kind of see them be kind of a little quiet in free agency because they're hanging on to these guys until the last possible moment. I think if they start making some moves coming up and, the Rodgers trade goes through or they go for, we're about to talk about Beckham or they make another big splash somewhere else, they're going to need the money. Although, I mean, I guess they could still like keep backloading contracts, but they don't have, they need to factor in their draft class and need to factor in season spending. Once, right as of right now, the only cap hits are the top 51, but once training camp hits, it goes to the full roster. So, so there's a lot of factors coming in. They don't really have much cap space, but there's ways to clear it. CJ Mosley, I imagine his contract will be restructured at some point. But yeah, so the Lazard contract was indicative of like what they've been doing all offseason, which, maybe I guess I didn't factor that in enough when I was like projecting a lot of stuff and who they're going to cut and stuff like that. How big they're expecting the cap to jump, which it's never guaranteed. You never know what's going to happen with that stuff, but they seem pretty confident it's going to jump. And even if it doesn't, they're all in on this year. So.
Yeah, you figure out next year after that. And let's be honest, when you're a good team, if you're a playoff team, if you're a Super Bowl contender with a Hall of Fame quarterback, it's easier to get people on cheaper deals, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, people are going to want to come. Like looking ahead to next off season, if they make a run into the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers and there's all this excitement and it's New York, you would imagine it would be easier to bring in free agents for what you want at that point. We've always talked on this podcast about how the Jets have always had to overpay free agents, and maybe that time is finally kind of coming to an end. All right, the other receiver you mentioned, Odell Beckham Jr. This still just seems wild to me that he would be interested in coming back to New York, but with the Jets, obviously Rodgers is a factor, but like, how real is this in your mind?
I think it's real. It's hard to get. Like, I feel like Odell Beckham is seriously considering the Jets. What I don't know is how serious their pursuit is of him. Like, I haven't been able to get a read on that yet. I think they're interested. I know Rodgers wants to play with him. I consider it a real possibility that he winds up with the Jets. The Cowboys removed themselves from consideration when they traded for Brandon Cooks the other day. There's still other receivers that are maybe available in trades, like DeAndre Hopkins, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. There's probably some other ones. So like you'll see if teams go and get those guys, and they're probably out of the Beckham sweepstakes. He's such a complicated target just because everybody knows the Odell deal at this point, especially in this area. Like, he's as talented as it comes when he's healthy. He has been healthy very much in the last few years. Missed all of last year as he was, rehabbing, and he did that whole free agency tour that amounted to nothing and tore his ACL in the Super Bowl with the Rams. He was starting to look like himself at the end, and then he got hurt. Like, you don't know what version of Odell you're getting. I don't think you can commit long-term to him. I don't know if that's what he's looking for and why he's hung around so long. Cost, all that stuff. Like, is he worth bringing in? And I don't know. There's a lot going on there, but I do think, talent-wise, the fact that you don't have to give up a draft pick to get him, like, there's some appeal there. If the Jets are going really all in on this year, he's more talented than anyone besides Garrett Wilson they have currently. So, I get the appeal of it and the potential of it, but there's also potential for a disaster, as there always is with a guy like that who's so volatile and all that stuff. I think teammates, he is generally a popular teammate. I think that part's overblown, but there's distractions that come with him.
And some of his problems in the past have been, there was always the questions when he was with the Giants, if there was an issue with him and Manning as far as that relationship.
Yeah, it's always quarterback
related. That's not going to be an issue with Rodgers.
Yeah, I imagine he'd be confident that Rodgers would be, be able to get him the ball. But the flip side of that is that, on paper, they'd have maybe the most talented wide receiver room in the NFL. If you look at Garrett Wilson, Odell Beckham, Allen Lazard, Elijah Moore, Denzel Mims, assuming Mims is in a trade. That's very good. But what, you have to factor in is that a year ago they were winning. Elijah Moore wasn't getting the ball. He was like the number 2 or 3 receiver, and he demanded a trade. He's not only not going to be getting the ball, he's going to have a hard time getting on the field with that group. You would hope that you'd be able to make it work and get a guy to buy in. And, you've seen teams do that where you have like 4 talented guys. You never know what's going to happen. Guys get hurt. Odell Beckham gets hurt. But I have a hard time believing they could bring in Odell and keep a guy like Elijah Moore. So maybe they then turn around and trade him somewhere else for draft picks or something, or maybe they'd include him in the Packers deal. But I think Elijah would be the one that would be most impacted by them getting a guy like a Beckham. And if they're interested in Beckham, I do wonder if they are interested in those other guys I mentioned. And like, are they all in and trying to just get as many good receivers as you can and not let Rodgers complain that he doesn't have weapons around him or whatever it is? And beyond the receivers, they still have those 2 tight ends who are going to be here now because they restructured their deals. They're probably going to have to add another running back. Brees will come back at some point. Michael Carter's getting targets a lot out of the backfield like that. There's a lot of mouths to feed, which is a good problem to have unless, one of those mouths is going to be mad even when you're winning. So it's a lot to think about. And, there's real risk of it not working out. I've seen surprising, like, not as many Jets fans as excited about the possibility as you would think. And there's been a lot of like, we don't want him. I don't know if that should be the stance. I get the reticence, but if you're looking to go in all in this year, then I get it. I do.
I think once he's arrived, that'll go away. But there's a
giant
Great thing. Point. There's a lot there.
It would be really weird having Odell be in New York and not playing for that'd just be strange seeing him in a Jets uniform and stuff like that. Which is why I feel it kind of does feel like the Jets historically are always bringing guys in at the end of their career, and LT and Matt Forte and Brett Favre and now guys like that just kind of like get that Jets uniform in at the very end, and sometimes it's memorable and sometimes it's not, and maybe that would be like what Odell would be like.
Hopefully memorable.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we got a lot to get to, but there's been a lot of good questions coming through. I've noticed in the chat, Marissa. What's going on?
Yeah. So big question, the common theme is the defensive tackle position versus O-line. So what do you think is the biggest need for this team right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty even split between those two. I think on paper, you have to say they actually have bodies at tackle that you could argue, like Mekhi Becton, talent-wise, could be good. Dwayne Brown, if he's healthy, he's solid. They like Max Mitchell, so at least have 3 guys. Defensive tackle, they don't have anyone. They have Quinnen Williams. They re-signed Solomon Thomas. That's pretty much it. They, have a couple, like, they have Isaiah Mack, who they claimed on waivers earlier in the offseason, like nobody exciting, but they lost Sheldon Rankins to the Texans. I think that's a big loss.
Mm-hmm.
They lost Nathan Shepard to the Saints. They tried signing Fletcher Cox. I think they believed they really had a shot at him. They offered him more than the Eagles did. So clearly they were all in on Fletcher Cox signed for $10 million. Sheldon Rankins signed for $10.5 million. So if they really wanted Sheldon Rankins, they could have paid him because they offered Fletcher Cox more than that. It would have been fascinating to see Cox in this team and not in an Eagles uniform and all that stuff. But ultimately that didn't work out. And the free agency options aren't that exciting right now. So do wonder what they're going to do there. Maybe Joe Douglas has something up his sleeve in a trade or something like that. But, if I would say defensive tackle is probably more of a need on paper, but in terms of importance and protecting Aaron Rodgers, I know they went after Orlando Brown, like that was reported before he signed a huge deal with the Bengals. So I think they clearly know that they could use an upgrade at those spots. I don't know if that'll come in free agency at this point either.
Could it come in the draft?
Could come in the draft, or again, maybe like a trade, although I don't know. They might not have as many draft picks to trade after they do a Rodgers deal. But yeah, they need to address both spots. If they stay at 13, it makes a lot of sense to pick a tackle there, especially if one of those 3 guys falls. But yeah, that's going to be those 2. And center is obviously another spot. I'm sure some people had some questions about that in there.
Yeah. So my next question is going to be about Ben Jones. There's been a lot of rumors about the Jets trying to bring him in to be the center for Aaron Rodgers. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I do think, there's some mutual interest there. I don't know what Ben Jones is looking for. If he's waiting to see if Rodgers is going to come in, his season ended early because of concussions last year, which is pretty scary, obviously. But historically, he's almost never missed any games. And when he plays, he's one of the better centers in the league. He played with Keith Carter in Tennessee and Todd Downing. Like, it makes a lot of sense. Connor McGovern's still out there. I think it's pretty clear the Jets maybe are willing to move on from him. And I feel like he probably hasn't found the market he was looking for because these centers haven't been getting as big of contracts. I think Ethan Posick from the Browns was like the perceived like top guy. I think he got like $6 million a year, something like that.
3 years, $18 million. And then McGovern, Bradley Bozeman got about the same with the Panthers.
And McGovern made more than that on his last deal. So I think the market is less than everybody expected. I think this is a pretty good class of centers in the draft too. Like you can get a pretty good one in the early second round, or if the Jets trade back or whatever it is. So I personally would think about drafting one, but Ben Jones, if you can get him and you're confident that he's healthy, you get him, and then maybe you draft someone to develop to replace him eventually. But, I know Tim wanted to talk about some of the guys they added. Not a lot to say about those guys, but the center is
slid down the rundown. The first so it's all good.
Yeah. Like they need depth on the O-line, and they need a center, and they need to figure out who their right tackle is. But I think, again, I've said this before on here in stories. I think the team is higher on their current offensive line than the fans are, is what I would say.
Yeah, so they did add Wes Schweitzer. Is that pronouncing it correctly?
Schweitzer in Cologne, right?
Yeah.
Cologne,
Could he be the perceived center if they don't add anybody?
Well, as of right now, he's their only option. But I don't think they signed him to be a starter. I think he's like a backup. He can play center and guard. I think the idea is he'd be a backup. But I mean, if they keep going further in the offseason and don't add anybody, then maybe he will be the starter. I don't know.
All right,
he's a guy that has 60 starts in his career, so
exactly.
he's done.
So he has experience at least.
Right.
And it's a 2-year deal.
Back to the D line. A lot of questions about Calais Campbell. Do you see that being a fit?
Yeah, fans are obsessed with that possibility. Calais Campbell is, let me see how old he is. He's pretty old. He is 36 years old. Yeah. He's still very good. Still has something left in the tank.
Great locker room guy. Great community guy. Yeah.
5.5 sacks. He can play D end and D tackle, which I know they like guys who can play both. I think he makes a lot of sense, but I don't know what Calais is looking for. I mean, he spent a lot of time in Baltimore. Before that, he was with the Cardinals forever. It would be if Joe Douglas wanted to get fans to stop being upset that he's, sitting on his hands, air quotes, that they keep saying, which I don't think is actually true. I think Calais Campbell will go a long way towards making everybody happy, but I'm not sure if that's what he wants or if he's going to look to go somewhere like a Buffalo or somewhere like that, where maybe as of right now, he can look at the roster and say, we're going to win a Super Bowl there. Like, I don't know what Calais is looking for, if he's looking for money or whatever it is. But the fact that he's lingering on in free agency still like is interesting. But I don't know. I wouldn't rule it out, but I haven't heard anything about that is what I would say.
Okay.
So I saw one other, and I guess we could even get this to the end, but there was a couple questions about QB2.
Oh, yes.
And what the
we talked
as
about
of
this
now,
in the last
I mean, it's
pod,
something
yeah.
we've talked a lot about, but as of now, do you think besides Rodgers, do they bring in another veteran as a backup, or what do they do there without Mike White now?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the more underrated, fascinating things about what happens if and when
there's always
the
Streveler.
Rodgers trade. Yeah, Streveler's the answer, but realistically, yeah, I don't know. I can't imagine they go in with Wilson as the only other quarterback, like as the number 2. I would think they want to bring competition. The quarterback market's pretty dried up. Teddy Bridgewater's still out there. If he's willing to sign a cheap deal, that'd be worth it. Backup legend Chase Daniel still out there. The best businessman in the NFL. Just keeps grinding away without ever playing. It's amazing stuff. He's still out there. And then you could see them maybe drafting a guy, but maybe not in the first round, but someone to like develop for long term. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there. But I can't imagine you go into a season comfortable with Zach as the number 2, but I could be wrong.
That would tell us a lot, I think. It's something we've talked about here. That's just if that is the case, I think it means maybe they think more of Zach than we think they do at this point, right?
Or I guess that they're confident Rodgers won't get hurt, I guess, because
that seems like a bad. I mean, he does. I will say Rodgers historically he plays through plenty of pain, right? Like last year, he was obviously injured most of the year, but still posted. So
it is gonna hurt for Jets fans when Mike White is playing against them late in the season and has a chance to like eliminate them from the playoffs or something, because everybody knows that's what's gonna happen. So.
By the way, is posted a football? Do people use that term in football, Zach?
What?
Posted? It's a baseball thing. They talk about guys that play every day. They post it.
Oh, no, I don't say that on football.
I just swung baseball jargon.
That's okay.
Yeah, keep that out of here, Tim. No baseball.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hey, the weather's getting nicer. It's exciting. Baseball season's about to start. If you're a Yankees fan, I'm
going to be in Arizona this time next week for the owners' meetings.
Right.
It's gonna be beautiful out there. I'm going to rub it in everybody's face on this podcast.
Yeah, check out the end of spring training. Right.
True. Yeah, it's going on while I'm there. That's true.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff.
All right, should we do rapid fire news to wrap things up here? And maybe if we get a few more questions in while we do this, we can tack them on at the end. But we mentioned Schweitzer and Cologne. But beyond that, if we go way back, Quincy Williams got a 3-year, $18 million deal. That's great. I think it's good to have Quincy back, and he's only 26 years old still. Obviously, you would assume it keeps Quinnen happy. So let's talk about that angle on it. When you think about Quinnen's upcoming contract, Darren Payne got 4 years, $90 million from the Commanders. Quinnen's going to get more than that, right, Zach? That kind of sets the low bar, I feel.
And there's still a few other contracts to come. Jeffrey Simmons, Dexter Lawrence, and I believe there's like one other guy. I think Chris Jones might be looking for a new deal. So the number is going to keep going up. The Jets have other priorities right now that I just think with the Rodgers stuff and everything else, they just can't really afford to look at the Quinnen contract just yet. But I've been saying the whole time, and I still think it's going to wind up in the $25 million a year range. What really matters is the guarantees and all that jazz and the cap hits and all that. But I think it's lands somewhere around $25 million, and it'll probably be, depending on the timing of it, the number 2, number 3 highest paid defensive tackle in the league. Nobody's going to reach the Aaron Donald contract, at least not yet, which is like over 30. But Quinnen's going to do well for himself, and bringing Quincy back certainly helps. They got him on a really team-friendly contract, I think, because the linebacker market, like most of the markets, honestly, a lot of the positions have had depressed markets this year because teams just aren't willing to pay these guys. Not as lucrative of a free agency class, and you're seeing stuff like the safeties and all that stuff. Like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson just took a pretty small deal.
Was interesting.
Yeah, and I've seen fans get mad, like, why aren't the Jets doing that? Like, why did the Jets sign him? First of all, you don't know that he would have taken that money with the Jets. And also, I don't think Joe Douglas is ever going to be someone who spends a lot of money on a safety. I think they're more likely to draft somebody early. They traded for Chuck Clark, which I don't know if we really got into on here, actually. yeah, they traded for Chuck Clark from the Ravens. I think he's a solid player. I do wonder how he fits next to Jordan Whitehead. I haven't gotten the sense that they're thinking about getting rid of Whitehead yet, but if they went and pursued another safety or they drafted the guy from Alabama, maybe they would move on from Jordan because they'd save like $7 million. But I don't know. They like him in the building. I'm curious to see how that works with those two safeties and how they fit next to each other. But Chuck Clark, good value, only $4 million cap hit this year. I think they only gave up like a 7th round pick. I think that was a good low key Joe Douglas trade that fills a position of need with a guy who's, from my understanding, he's perceived as like a very good leader and locker room guy as well. So bringing in guys like that can never hurt. It's like I said, it's been a quiet offseason. They, I'm sure this was coming up shortly for the rapid fire, but they got a new punter. It looks like they're gonna be signing.
The rapid fire is not being very rapid.
Yeah, I know. I can't talk quickly.
It's Monday morning. It's okay.
Yeah, Thomas Morstead, who actually like filled in for Braden Mann a couple years ago. I know fans were pretty upset with Braden Mann by the end. Adam Schefter reported the Jets were shopping Braden Mann in the trade. I can't imagine that's going to happen.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is there any world where they could get probably a 7th round pick away from somebody for Braden Mann?
Maybe, but I don't know. That's probably just them trying to drum up some noise, and Schefter helped them. But it's more likely they cut Mann or it's a competition in camp kind of thing. But Morstead is still pretty good. He's 37. He's another guy that is really well liked around in terms of like the teams he's been on and stuff.
Won a Super Bowl with the Saints.
It is funny how much like whenever I would do like ranking team needs, like I would get comments on the articles like, you didn't include punter. Why not? Like Jets fans, I feel like focus on punter more than any other fan base.
The only thing more is maybe kicker, but that is a position that's been solidified. Kind of, I think. We feel good about Greg the Leg returning, and he's back.
I forget who the last one was, but I saw there was like somebody pointed out he's going to be the first kicker they've had in back-to-back years in like a while. So
it's wild.
So inevitably he'll revert back to Jets kicker form, maybe. But he was pretty good last year. He tailed off a little bit at the end, but you feel pretty good about Greg Zuerlein as your kicker, I think. And Thomas Hennessy is still back for another go around, longest tenured guy. The Thomas Hennessy hive is still going strong.
What else do I have? Rapid fire.
Michael Dunn with a funny comment there.
Yeah, Braden Mann, Shefty, nice try to lose my number. Remembering back to the Aaron Rodgers situation. All right, anything else trickling in, Marissa?
I mean, a lot of questions like, potential trade candidates who could be, part of the Rodgers deal.
I did see. What will your first question to Rodgers be?
That's a good one.
What do you? I won't say you, but big picture. Do you think the first question for Aaron Rodgers is about the saga that got him to New York, or do you think it's about the 2023 New York Jets?
It's a good question. The first questions usually aren't like the hardest hitting ones,
right?
But,
you got to throw the softball up there first, right?
I wind up being the one to do the first question a lot because a lot of times nobody wants to ask the first question. And I'm tired of like the awkward silence, so I'll yell it out. But I would say probably something to do with like this process, how it went, and or like what it's like sitting up there, like no longer a Packers quarterback kind of thing. I feel like that's where it'll start off. But yeah, I'm interested in what the crowd will look like, if the Jets will make a whole thing of it or if it'll be more low key. Like I imagine they would make a big thing of it. That's why timing wise, I wonder when it's going to be. I mentioned this before, but I think if it doesn't happen this week, which there's been no noise, which is kind of crazy how it's been so quiet. But if it doesn't happen this week, I think it would make sense in owners meetings because they'll all be there. So in theory, they could, Joe Douglas and Brian Gutekunst could sit down together and talk it out. Whereas right now they're probably doing it over the phone, and maybe you can peer pressure somebody into doing something quicker. Because if somebody's looking me in the face, you can peer pressure me usually into doing stuff. It's not great. I don't know how good Joe Douglas and Brian are at being peer pressured, but I'd be happy to go and shout some stuff at them to get it going too. I'll try and find where they're negotiating. Maybe they're going to be at like In-N-Out Burger or something.
We want you
good question.
In the bushes, hiding with binoculars.
Yeah, exactly.
Out what they're,
I'll get one of those fancy like FBI things where you can like hear what they're talking about.
Yes.
Like, hold up the satellite thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
If they get the deal done in a couple of weeks, then you wonder when does Rodgers actually like get on a plane
I know. I've been wondering about that too.
Isn't that like
there was a rumor? There was a
OTAs?
rumor, and I haven't been able to see if it was true. That there was like Aaron Rodgers has been Hoboken shopping for apartments. I don't know if that was true or not.
True.
I don't.
There's no way Aaron Rodgers is moving to Hoboken.
Yeah. He's
there's
more
no
likely
way
to be in the
doing
middle
it.
of nowhere in Florham Park or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
And there's no way he's doing it himself. Like,
yeah, great. Yeah, you
people
send
for
somebody to do that, especially someone.
He's gonna move from Green Bay.
And he's the most famous person in like sports right now, who everybody has their eye on. So.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just funny. We're already reaching that stage, and there's gonna be certain publications that are gonna be like, following his dating life and everything he does and says and stuff like that.
Well, Zach, Jersey City's where it's at anyway, not Hoboken.
I agree. Yeah, come to Jersey City, Aaron. I'll give you a tour. I won't ask you for your number.
It makes more sense for him to live in like Morristown, though.
Yeah, it seems more likely he would do that.
House.
Yeah.
All right, one more question, Marissa.
Yeah, a lot of questions about Quan Alexander, and if he'll be back this year.
I guess I didn't I knew fans liked him, but I didn't realize until this offseason how much they liked Quan. Because before free agency started, I did like a tweet where I predicted where everybody would go. I got a couple. I've mostly been right. I predicted Nathan Shepard to be back, and he's gone. And I think I said Sheldon Rankins will be back, and I was wrong about that. But I said Quan gone, and everybody got like all fired up about that. I don't know. Maybe they circle back to him if there's still a bunch of linebackers. It's been again like linebackers aren't making much money in free agency. I think linebacker as a position has kind of been devalued a little bit. So I do wonder if they just bring him back at some point as depth. I think they're more likely to go and find somebody in the draft to develop as like, the third guy who like Quan's role. He didn't play as much, but he was considered like the third starter. And then next year or the year after, when you move on from CJ Mosley, you have someone you could plug in as a replacement. I don't know. I could see him coming back. The fact that he hasn't signed elsewhere means it's always a possibility, but I don't really have a good read on how they feel about bringing him back. He is a locker room guy. He's a leader. They love him in that building. He's the energy guy. You heard a lot of stories about they'd be down in a game and he'd be going around the sideline to everybody, getting them pumped up. Like there's value in having him there, and he knows solid defense and all that stuff. So it would make sense, but I don't have a great read on if they want to bring him back or not.
All right. Well, I think we have reached the end of this episode. Hey, if you want to join The Athletic, you can do it as a new subscriber right now for $1.99 a month for 12 months. Go to theathletic.com/can't wait. You can get all of Zach's great writing, all of our other NFL content, and all the other sports. March Madness right now. Baseball season's about to gear up. The NHL and NBA playoffs around the corner. So no better time to join The Athletic. Theathletic.com/can't wait. We'll be back with you, I think, in 2 weeks, unless something crazy happens. That'll be after the owners' meetings. Feels like that's maybe when this thing gets done. So we'll plan on that. But as always, if breaking news happens, we'll get back to you sooner. Zach, any parting thoughts?
I saw someone tweet at us jokingly saying, "Can't wait's at 11." That means the Aaron Rodgers trade will happen around 2. So, it would be annoying, but I would be happy to get it over with. So I'm all for that.
And we will not be back at 4 to recap that. If that happens.
We'd be back later in the week.
We're going to do 4 podcasts today, breaking down each aspect of the trade.
Yes.
We're going to set a record for single podcast episodes in a day. It's going to be great.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Make sure you also subscribe to the YouTube page, subscribe to the podcast, give us 5 stars, tell your friends, all that stuff. The YouTube page up over 6,000 subscribers. We'd love to. Hey, let's get that to 10 at some point, right? Let's keep that building up. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Talk to you soon.